Hey guys, it's Todd. Welcome to the Do Different podcast. Got a fantastic guest. Got a definitely a unique way of kind of looking at things. But this is Marc Overton, and he's based over in London, so it's a little bit late for him, a little bit early for us, but we'll figure it out. So, Marc,
Thank
welcome in, man.
you so much, Todd. It's so nice to be here. Thanks for the invite, and I'm looking forward to the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, for the audience that's here that doesn't know you, take a couple minutes, introduce yourself, and let everyone know kind of what you're about.
Okay, sure. So I go by the name. This is a sort of brand name, if you like, personal brand name, Metabolic Mark, and think that's a pretty good place to jump straight in because some people might think I've checked this out with friends and people. When you first hear the word metabolic, what does that sort of instantly say to you? And a lot of people will think, oh, maybe another fitness guy that's talking about doing these kind of like hardcore huff and puff type workouts or trying to get your metabolism a bit faster so you can burn off more energy, more calories, weight loss, etc. And there's a little bit of truth in that, apart from all of the huff and puff and grind. And what I specialize in as a health coach and sort of fitness expert, if you like, is helping people with their metabolic health, which avoids having to go towards things like restrictive eating as an approach to try and lose weight, or to go towards excessive exercise, let's say, in the name of fat loss. And it's a much more simpler approach that really sort of goes to the root cause of people's problems and challenges, and can liberate them into a point where they can find what they want, peace in terms of their health and fitness, but without all of those kind of like those kind of unwanted side effects, I guess, of having to that a lot of people portray a fit and healthy lifestyle to come with. So that's a little bit about what I do professionally and what my calling is. And the reason I got to that point is because right now, as a 41-year-old, all the way through my 20s, right through till mid 30s, I was a chronic over-exerciser. And I don't mean like a gym bunny. I wasn't a bodybuilder. I wasn't a hyper endurance athlete or anything like that. But I was just somebody that was in a really full on self inflicted routine and very much mentally stuck in it, all for the purpose of trying to stay fit, well, and in full transparency look good in t-shirts, particularly when I was like in my 20s, right? And when I look back to those days, the amount of guesswork that was going on in terms of not only how I worked out and what type of routines I was in, but also how I ate. And as I said, I got through till mid 30s. By this point, I was a dad, had two young children, and I had some aha moments, both through self-experimentation, but also because I went back to school and I learned about nutrition. I learned about health, holistic health. I specialized in nutritional anthropology, evolutionary biology, so AKA sort of ancestral health or primal lifestyle. And that's what kind of opened up this awareness that I have now. So that's in short where I've come from. A little bit about very quickly about some of the things that I've done with my life. Like I said, right now I'm in London, but up until 2019, my family and I, my French wife and my two children, were living out in Asia. I was an expat for a decade and a half, actually, living in some pretty cool places, like mainly in Thailand, in Bali. We even had a random year living out in Costa Rica. So a very, very different lifestyle as opposed to sort of like the family now back in England. But there you go.
So and you're right. Like when it comes to, I think it's not just like health, but it's really like with a lot of stuff. People always tend to go to like what's the fix for my problem rather than looking at what's causing me to have the problem, because it sounds like kind of what you deal with is getting people to understand like what, why, how they can solve the beginning stages so that they don't have to go through the, to your point, the excessive weight loss or the crash diets or surgeries or whatever. But it's really understanding like what puts you in that mode and solving for it up front rather than dealing with the results that come at the end.
Yeah. Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head, and that's why I get so lit up about talking about this subject and serving others. Because when I went through my own transformation, if you like. When I say transformation, from the outside looking in, you might not have noticed too much. You know, if you had been, no, no, it's not like I had a physical transformation necessarily, but health wise, I certainly did. Because when I used to overtrain and when I was, being way excessive and I was eating, my whole diet was very different. You know, I was a high carbohydrate eater back in those days to fuel those, those fitness episodes. And I also ate in a very extended eating window, which, I mean, to most people out there, that just means waking up and having breakfast, kind of eating, potentially grazing or snacking, but having, three to four meals during the day, and maybe eating even a snack not too long before you go to bed, right? So that's what I mean by an extended eating window. And that was me. That was me right through till mid 30s, like I said. But I think the thing is that and I know so many people resonate this in this. Perhaps a lot of your listeners do too. I really thought I was doing everything right, and if somebody had come along and told me back then, let's say when I was, I don't know, just pluck a number up, let's say when I was 28 years old or 30 years old, if somebody had come along and tried to sort of tell me otherwise, I would have got quite defensive, I think, at the time, because I was like, hey, man, who are you to come and tell me that my fitness program is, off point? And, I didn't even, I don't think I'd even got my head around or even heard of the term of overtraining or overreaching or, draining yourself and depleting yourself. I hadn't got my head around that concept. So, there was a real sort of game changing moment for me, which happened when I was 32, and I was living in Koh Samui in Thailand, and I picked up a common sort of chest infection, nothing serious, a bit of a cough basically, and I continued like I always did when I got a cold or something along those lines. My mentality at the time was, all right, got to go out and get my run in to sweat it out, right? Sweat out the germs, sweat out the toxins, and it's going to make me feel better. And there's probably an element of truth in that, in the fact that my hormonal response and the endorphins, etc., those feel good hormones that you get from exerting in any kind of fitness endeavor, it's a bit of a con because it makes you feel like you feel good and it's been helpful for your body. But actually, a lot of the time, it can be quite the opposite, especially when you're battling, a cold, for example, because you're just suppressing your immune system actually, and you want your immune system to be able to fight the cold, right, or fight the infection. So, without going the sort of long way around on this story, basically that very you know, uninvasive chest infection then turned into pneumonia over a period of a month. So it developed into bronchitis. And the problem was is that I was continuing to train. And the only reason I cottoned on, I mean, obviously I felt really unwell, did a course of antibiotics that didn't work. So I went right through the course of antibiotics, continued to train. I mean, when I look back now, I'm just thinking, what were you doing? Just total madness. And then, like I said, developed into full blown pneumonia. And that was a real wake up call for me because I was like, hey, man, like by this point, this kind of like the party side of my lifestyle had already quietened down. I was already in my early 30s, had kids or had one kid. And at that point, so it wasn't to do with any of burning the candle at both ends scenario. This was specifically to do with I was looking and going, hey, I'm eat pretty well, I'm exercising all of the time. How has this common cold developed into pneumonia? And that was when I realized, and that's when I really started to look into things and realize that actually there's a very big difference between health and fitness. And I think a lot of people, like I used to do, we only focus on the fitness even if we think even if we think we're sort of investing in health, it's actually can be quite the contrary, right? So that's why I like to help people, as you said, go to the root cause. And there's two kind of like types of situations. You could be somebody that knows that they haven't necessarily been looking after themselves super well. Whether that's through their diet or whether they've just been quite sedentary, whether through, just through their choices in terms of their lifestyle, maybe it's forced upon them in terms of the job they do, but they're very aware that they are not super healthy. Basically, they could be making more supportive choices, and though somebody like that who might go on a weight loss plan could really save themselves so much time, so much energy, and also that really unfair experience of putting in a lot of effort over a period of, let's say, 2, 3 months, which typical programs tend to be, but then having a rebound boomerang experience where all the weight comes back on again, and you're left kind of clueless and frustrated as to why that's happened. And then you have to kind of like recoup all of the motivation and energy to go through that again, right? I mean, how many people can resonate with that? And then you've got the other side of the spectrum that might be a bit like I was, so like somebody that's already exercising, has been for a long time, but it's kind of stuck in this hamster wheel where, okay, they might look okay on the surface, but they're, boy, are they working for it. They're committed to a 4 or 5 day spin class routine, or hitting the treadmill at 5 a.m. in the morning, when they could be doing other things or spending time or just having a more peaceful, productive start to the day elsewhere, right? So it goes across the board. It's not just for somebody that's unhealthy. It's also for people out there that might be doing things already, but they could do things very different. So by focusing on metabolic health and rebooting the metabolism, a lot of the kind of offenders that come towards, particularly like insidious weight gain or weight control, which is having a uncontrollable hunger coming out of nowhere, those sort of hunger pangs that you have to answer. Having a monstrous appetite, which is one that I can relate to so much because my appetite was insane before when I used to do all of that exercise. So I'd go out and do a vigorous routine, and all I'd have in my mind is coming back and eating some giant bowl of pasta, just to replenish. And on top of that, you've got the last one is cravings, excuse me. Yeah. So when we exercise a lot or we eat a diet that is not so supportive, particularly on the high carbohydrate side of things, we're going to get those cravings for refined carbs or sugary snacks. So when you actually improve your metabolic health, become what we call fat adapted, those kind of free culprits just naturally quieten. So everything just becomes so much more effortless. And then from a fitness perspective, we don't even need to be doing those kind of real, draining huff and puff efforts. I'm not demonizing it, by the way, because if you're competing or, that's something that you like to do, go for it. But I'm just saying from a weight control perspective, and also for promoting optimal sort of well-being and health, we don't need to do that approach. You're far better off focusing on frequent low intensity body movement, which could just be walking, shuffling around, dynamic stretching, but frequently. And then occasionally doing all out type of efforts, but maybe that's only once a week or so, just to work on organ reserve and to push those organs above baseline, right? So you can get the benefits of that. So it's so interesting. I mean, I was totally blown away, as you can probably tell just by listening to me. When I learned all of this stuff, I just couldn't believe it, right? And as I know, I'm not the only one that's been investing so much time into fitness and how to eat and supplements. Let's not even get started on supplements. How much people spend on supplements before looking at other areas that they can adjust, right? That I just felt like it was really important to try and share that message and get that message out there.
Yeah, and the thing that I love about like all the people that I talk to, and yourself included, is as a coach and as a teacher, however you want to phrase it, it's it's we found something that works for us, and our first mission is we got to figure out a way to share this message out to everybody. Be it that you know the metabolic health, and you found a way that is like, this isn't like crash dieting, not extreme exercising. It's just making a small adjustments to the way that you live. For myself, it's like finding clarity through simplicity. Like,
Yeah.
life's complicated, don't overdo it, simplify it. But it's kind of a recurring theme. Like the people that we look to, their goal isn't to necessarily like, I'm gonna get rich and do this. It's about, they found something, and their first goal is to share it with everyone else.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right. So, without giving away your secrets and everything like that, but just give us like a couple, whatever, two, three different things that, for the most people sitting out there, that at least kind of focus on or think about that will help get them started on the right path?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. So I would first of all, as I said earlier, like where the real sort of enlightenment, if you like, happened with me when I had those aha moments. That came when I started looking back to our past, right, as a species. To me, that just made so much sense. I mean, in terms of often when you see on coaches' websites, the word science backed comes up a lot, right? And I don't think that science backed gets more stronger, I guess, than evolution in my in my opinion. I'm sure most people will agree with that, right? And without going on off on a sort of big rant about why that might be the case and the rationale. I mean, in simple form, we've been around for a long time, 2.5 million years approx in terms of our evolution as a species, and a lot of that time would have been as hunter and gatherers, right? So not only in terms of the way that we ate, because obviously that would have been slightly different in terms of what time frame we were on and where we were in the planet, of course, right? Whether we were in Africa or later on maybe in the northern hemisphere, it might have been cooler, etc. But so it might have been various changes in diet. But the point is that we were hunter and gatherers, I guess, right? And we would have been living by the circadian rhythm, and all of those kind of like lifestyle side of things come into play. Now, from let's say approx 10,000 years ago, there was an agricultural revolution that happened, and we significantly changed the way that we ate as a species very, very quickly. And it became very grain based and carbohydrate based. The way that we could, grow things and get our hands on things, we just changed a lot very, very quickly. 10,000 years on the perspective of 2.5 million years is a very short time. And obviously, if you think about this day and age where we have been, even in the way that we've evolved in the last 10 years, I mean, in terms of hyperconnectivity with the digital age, but particularly in the last 50 years, 100 years, in terms of the quality of our food, the nutrient density of our food, um, lifestyle habits, the comfort crisis. I mean, we could just go on and on and on, right? We've made it really, really challenging for ourselves actually to stay fit and well almost, right? We've made it really difficult for ourselves. But going back to the hunter and gatherer side of things, that shift in that 10,000 years, like I said, not only on food but also lifestyle, our genes, our genetic expectations just haven't caught up. We haven't evolved, right? So genetically speaking, we still our genes are still expecting us to eat, move, and live kind of in terms of lifestyle like we would have pre-agricultural revolution as hunter and gatherers, right? So my first bit of advice would be have a look into that, right? So even if it's just a very quick search, but start to have a look at what that kind of blueprint would look like, right? So a lot of it is common sense actually, but I mean, just a quick one of foods, for example, anything that you can sort of pick, pluck, pull, catch, hunt, you're going to be in a pretty good place, right? So from a dietary perspective, rather than sort of go try to put a fad or what could be considered, excuse me, a fad name to it. So I'm always a bit careful if I put the word like primal or paleo, even though I'm a certified primal health coach. I'm just a bit careful sometimes because I know when you're not really studying this stuff all the time and it's not your area of expertise, you might hear a word like that and go, that sounds a bit like a trend or a fad, a bit like paleo, for example, right? Or keto and other these kind of names, you can suddenly put it into a bracket. For me, if you focus on removing or reducing or significantly reducing anyway these three things, you're going to be in a good place regardless of what the rest of your diet looks like, right? And those three things are grains, which is a big one, right? Because obviously grains has been we're all emotionally attached to grains, from from the way even the way that we grew up when we were kids, the smells, what we might have had associated around celebrations, or just from a cultural point of view around the world, grains are enormous. They're sort of like it's a big one. It is a big one. So and remember, I'm saying we don't necessarily have to eliminate completely. I'm just saying reduce significantly. So they're not the centerpiece of each meal. Day by day is what I'm trying to say. Sugars or added sugars. Okay, that's nothing new to everybody. But the problem being is hidden sugars, of course, that just get into pretty much everything. So becoming a food label detective is one of the first steps that I do with my clients that I coach. It's just helping people how to really read food labels and what to look out for because it's incredible what the food industry is allowed to get away with, right? So, I mean, it's I think one of the most supportive decisions you'll ever make is learning how to read a food label. And you don't need to go off and study for a month, by the way. This is stuff that you can learn really, really quickly and just know what to avoid, basically. So added sugars meaning, obviously sugars that might be like fructose that might be in fruits. That's not what I mean. I'm talking, or, natural sugars that you might find in honey is another example, good quality honey. And then the last being vegetable seed oils, industrial oils, basically, which is getting a lot more talked about now. But certainly, I mean, I remember growing up that there was this big sort of campaign in my parents' generation where people would avoid butter, right, real good quality butter, and swap it for margarine, right? And I mean, right now, I mean, that would be the last thing I would advise. It'd be quite the opposite. It'd be stay well away from margarine and go with the quality butter, right? So these kind of like pro-inflammatory, um, really quite toxic, nasty, unhealthy fats, if you can remove them from your diet, whether that's through your own home cooking, or as I said, by learning how to read labels, for example. Here in England, we have rapeseed oil pretty much in anything. Like any kind of packaged food that you pick up, you'll see rapeseed oil often sneaks into even things you would never think it sneaks into. And again, so that's one thing that I encourage clients to jump on, right? So once you like I said, reduce those things, you'll notice a significant difference immediately. Next, going on to fitness, the one thing that I would help people start to understand that you don't need to be doing and can be quite destructive when it's done regularly is what I call black hole cardio. So you do find a lot of coaches these days, so you don't need to do cardio, needs to be a little bit more specific because what is cardio? I mean, even walking is cardio. Even doing a resistance training in a gym is improving cardio fitness or cardiovascular fitness. So it needs to be a bit more specific. And yeah, black hole training would be what we call in the fitness world sort of anaerobic training, right? So a really good formula, if your listeners are interested on this is a quick one, just a little tip to write down if you've got a pen handy or put in your phone, is 180 minus your age, right? But the number that you get with that, if you have some kind of heart rate tracker, whether it's on your watch or something that gives you can keep an eye on your heart. If you're let's say you're going out for a gentle jog and you stay below that formula, 180 minus your age, you're going to be in a pretty good place. You're going to be in aerobic training. And another sort of telltale sign is that you can probably hold a conversation with somebody. Let's say you had a jogging partner, right? So that's the level of intensity. Now, for some people, you'll be like, that doesn't feel like I'm exercising. I'm not feeling like I'm getting that push from that. But it's quite hard to get your head around initially if you have been a cardio person that goes out and pushes himself. Like I used to be able to run these really fast 10K runs, and you feel like you're not getting that buzz and you're not burning calories and you're not doing this. But it's quite the opposite of that actually. That's the real fat burning zone. You're not going to deplete yourself. You're going to recover quicker, especially if you're over, if you're mid 30s up. Like I said, I'm in my 40s now. The clients I work with tend to be in their 40s and 50s. So you need to be really conscious of recovery too. So for fat loss or fat control, for keeping your immune system in a good place and all of the other sides of well-being, it's much better to train in that zone and focus on that zone. And then with where you want to push yourself, keep that much less frequent. And if you take a very, very popular exercise modality like HIIT training, high intensity interval training. Now, there's nothing wrong. Again, it's not about demonizing any of these practices, but what's happened, HIIT actually is born from another modality called Tabata, and Tabata is I think it's 8 rounds of 20 seconds with 10 seconds rest, which looks like 4 minutes. Now, believe me, if that's done properly, when I say all out efforts, it's supposed to be all out efforts. I'm talking like almost like 95% effort, whatever that is. Now, if you're going to do that, like a proper Tabata session, you're not going to be doing any more than 4 minutes. That is tough. Like to do 20 seconds all out with 10 seconds rest back to back 8 times. That's a real killer workout, right? And the benefits of that and the stimulation that you get from a metabolic standpoint is incredible. It's a great workout. It's not something you do every day, of course, but it is a great workout. But like a lot of these things, the modality gets into different hands, and it's kind of like the old Chinese whispers, and it crosses gyms, crosses platforms, and whatnot, and that's developed into And I used to be, and I can be accused of this. If you go onto YouTube, the very first video that I posted on YouTube is me doing a home hit workout, like a follow along home hit workout. And this is before I had had my transformation, right? So I was well intentioned. I thought I was helping people, but I would never give that advice now. I'd say avoid it like the plague because it's going to really, really deplete you and evoke a monster appetite later on in the day. So the secret is low intensity movement, focus on that, and then occasional all out efforts, but with luxury intervals. So it could look like a sprint session. In fact, I did one this morning. Sunny day here in England. I went out mid morning. I did some wind sprints, just to warm up. That probably took me about 5 minutes, and making sure that I was in touch with my body sensations, making sure I felt loose and ready to perform. And I was like, yep. So I ticked that, said, yep, this is cool. I'm a sprint day. If I didn't feel good, I would just can it and I would do it another day. But I felt good. So I did a bit of a warm up and then I executed maybe 4 or 5 all out sprints, like running sprints in the park, only about 8 to 10 seconds. And here's the real sort of secret to it. Those intervals are luxury periods. Like I'm not timing it. I'm not looking at my watch. I'm not worried about any kind of seconds, numbers, nothing. I will literally just make sure, again, intuitively and listening to my body signaling, I will make sure that when I next go for that next effort, I'm fully ready to perform again. The same level of exertion. So that might look like, depending on what your fitness level look like, that could be a minute's rest. It could be as much as 3 minutes. So the beauty of it is that the whole workout lasted probably, by the time I'd warmed down a little bit, I probably got back in after 20 minutes. So out the front door, back in 20 minutes. I've done a really, really powerful workout. And another thing about that type of workout is it's human growth hormone boosting and testosterone boosting. So for folk that are over the 40 mark or over the 50 mark, I mean that's an anti-aging cocktail that you want to be getting your hands on, right? Whereas what we know obviously about overdoing it with too much exercise in the gym, particularly with heavy resistance training, which is good again, but as if it can be overdone, it could deplete those very important things that we actually want in terms of anti-aging, right? So yeah, so much sort of like little tweaks that they don't take too much to actually implement, but can just make such a big difference with the right guidance.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so for the audience out there, like, subscribe. Obviously, Mark shared a bunch of tidbits with us. So if you like and subscribe, you can replay it and watch everything. Also, in the show notes, Mark has a gift for everyone. It's about a 45-minute video, just kind of the intro to the program and everything. So encourage you guys to get there and check that out. So, Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. I've learned a lot. I know that for sure. So
Well, look, honestly, like as I said earlier, it really feels makes me happy to basically just share the information because I know how much it can change people's lives, right? So for me, that's light work, and thanks for having me on so I can share the message. I really enjoyed it.
yeah, absolutely. So for the audience out there, enjoy the rest of your day. Mark, good to see you, my friend, and we'll catch up with you guys later.
Cheers, Todd.
All right.